Hi everyone, it's Diane with Batik, and today is Fabric Friday. Our topic today is t-shirts. A couple of weeks ago, I stitched up and shared with you my very first overalls, the Riley overalls from True Bias. And what I didn't finish doing was I really wanted a new t-shirt to go with the overalls. And so what I did is I found our hand-dyed coral peach jersey knit. I went back to the True Bias website and downloaded the Jessie tee pattern, and it's a free download. And that is what I used to make this t-shirt. This t-shirt has a round neck. It has nice short sleeves, and it is a very loose fitting style. I really, really love this t-shirt, and I'll put a picture up so you can see me wearing the t-shirt. When I finished making this, I got to thinking about all the different decisions I made along the way. And so I'm going to take you through some of the step-by-steps of what I did to make this t-shirt using some of our new fabric and a different pattern this time. But I'm using a different pattern to show you some of the differences between the styles of the t-shirt patterns that are out there and things to consider when you're making a decision for which pattern you'd like to use. Before we get going, I want to share with you some of the t-shirts I have behind me here. I looked at each one of these when I was trying to decide on the pattern I would use, and this one is the square neck top by the Friday Pattern Company, and I really love this just because it does have a little different neckline, and it doesn't have an attached sleeve. It's just sort of a cap that goes over the top of your shoulder, and it's intended to be a crop top, but I did lengthen it, as I seem to do with all of my shirts. So this is just a really fun, simple, very simple, quick pattern to make. I'm not going to go through each one of these, but I'm going to show you a couple of others. I made the Scout tee. Now the Scout tee is written for woven fabrics, but the style of it is just perfect for a knit tee as well. And so what I did is I have made this out of our hand-dyed lake, and this is the Jersey Knit. And this past week, I made another version, which is out of our Jersey Knit, and this is the Violetta Soft Mint. And I wanted to do this just to, again, double check and make sure that I was doing the right things with the sizing, because it is a jersey that I'm making this out of. So I downsized 2 sizes to take advantage of the stretch that we have within our Jersey Knit. And this is a simple facing that, again, is tucked inside. It's not a neckband that stands up. I lengthened the sleeves a little bit because it has a very short sleeve. But again, loose fitting, really fun t-shirt. I showed you the Jessie top. The next one here, which is the top we're going to make today, is the McCall's 6964 pattern. And this particular pattern has various neck options, neck finishings and variations. It has sleeveless, short sleeve, 3/4 length sleeve, and long sleeve. And this top has a little bit of a shape to it. It has more of an hourglass shape to really fit the style of you as to whether or not you want it to be tight to you or not. And so this is actually a very, very fun top to make. And again, this is the one that we're going to make today. And then you can also make, this was the other one that I did make out of that same pattern, which is the V-neck, and this is the 3/4 length top. And this is our Phoenix Natural Sapphire fabric. So I'm going to make the McCall's 6964. It's just this pattern is really, really fantastic, and it's one of the older McCall's patterns. It has a t-shirt that is sleeveless, short sleeve, long sleeve, 3/4 length sleeve, and various neck styles, okay? This was actually, you probably won't find this anywhere on the website. We have a few of these patterns left, but it was rewritten. I shouldn't even say it was rewritten. It's an identical pattern, because if you take a look at the front, you see the pink person here and the pink person there. They're exactly the same pattern. It is now Batik 6848. We have both of these on our website. But I'm going to make the short sleeve tee with a boat neckline to it, because that's one of my favorite necklines. So we're going to do that, and I'm going to use our jersey knit. This is the Gardenese Divine in the shade of Borello, and this is one of our newest fabrics. I only have, because it's a sample of this fabric, I only have 1 yard of this fabric. And that was the other thing that I really want to talk about, is how much of the 72-inch wide jersey knit do we need to make a t-shirt? What I have found is that for sizes up to approximately, I would say about a 20, which typically has, let me see what the measurements are back here. The finished measurements of, let's just talk about the bust line and the hip of a 46.5, the bust line of about a 43. That is typically the cutoff to where we can get both the front and the back pieces on the fold on one width of fabric. So that's typically about 3/4 of a yard of fabric or so. And so that's why I knew I could definitely get my short sleeve t-shirt out of 1 yard of fabric. Before we start laying out our pattern pieces for the McCall's top, I thought I would take a moment to share with you the front pattern piece for 3 or 4 different t-shirt pattern companies, just so that you can kind of see the differences in their design and how they would potentially fit. So this is the True Bias Jessie T front pattern piece. Here is our center fold. We have our neckline, we have our shoulder, our sleeve opening, and as you can see, a very loose, straight fit. Now, I want to share with you, this is my t-shirt. So I have it sized for me. So I have an 8 around the top and at the bust, and then I grade it to a 10 and then to a 14. If I was going to leave this as an 8 the whole entire way, it would be almost straight down from the underarm to the hem. It would be straight. So I like to have just a little bit of an A-line angle. And so that's why that is this shape. Okay, the Scout tee, I'm gonna lay this pattern piece right on top. Again, this is the front. So this is the center fold here, right along the center fold there. Here is our neckline, our shoulder, and our sleeve opening. As you can see, the neckline is about, I don't know, 2 inches or so, 1 3/4 inches deeper than the Jessie tee, so it's much lower. We have a narrower shoulder, and then we have a much higher arm sky right here. So it's about 2 inches or so higher than the Jessie arm opening, which is much wider and looser fit. The side angle or the side fit of this Scout tee is almost identical to the shape that I would like to have for my Jessie tee. So that is almost identical. Now let's put on top of that the McCall 6964, right? center fold right here, and we're matching our shoulder. This is the neckline, but remember, I selected the boat neck, and so I feel bad that this isn't identical to the round neck that the other two t-shirts have, so take that into consideration. But the boat neck has a higher neckline, which is much like the Jersey tee, but it goes out deeper on the shoulder. The Jersey tee is a traditional round neck tee. And then we have a narrower shoulder, and it actually slopes a little bit more. And we have kind of a tighter opening for our sleeve. And now the big difference here is the shape of our side seam. It's much more curvy, it's much more fitted to, it's intended to be a much more fitted t-shirt than the other two, which are designed to be loose fitting t-shirts. So we have to take that into consideration when you're looking at how do I want my bust area to fit, the waist, do we really want it to come in that tight, and then the hip area itself. So I am going to have to adjust this a little bit from the last time that I made this garment, and we'll do that when we lay out our pattern piece. I do have one more pattern that I want to lay on top of this, and I'm doing this because even though the sleeve is not the same, I love the fit of the itch to stitch t-shirts. This is a raglan sleeve, so I'm not even going to take that into consideration here. But the opening, if I put the Isleris top, which is the neckline right here, it is more of a square neck top, but we're way up right where we are with the McCall's top. Our sleeve is very similar to the McCall's sleeve, even though it will be a raglan, but the opening is at the same point. We have a curved hemline here where all the other t-shirts are very straight. And this is really the shape I think that I really do like on myself, which for the itch to stitch patterns goes from a 10 to a 12, and then it grades here to a 16. So each one, as you can see, each one of these pattern pieces has a little different shape to the side seam and to the arm. And I think those for me are the most important things that I look at when I'm looking at a simple t-shirt where we really only have the front, the back, a sleeve, and either a neck band or a neck facing. I'm going to move these pattern pieces aside and let's start laying out our pattern for the McCall's 6964. One of the first things that I do is I'll take my pattern pieces, knowing that the front and the back are on a center fold. I'll take my pattern piece and I'm going to measure the widest point from the center fold over. And I give myself a little bit of ease. So this is going to be about an inch or so. So that's 11 inches up there. And let's make it about 12 inches. The reason I care about that measurement is it just makes it so much easier when I want to fold my fabric. So I'm going to take my fabric here, and first of all, when you're working with a jersey knit, we need to pay attention to the straight of grain. So I take a look right along my fold edge here and make sure that I can follow the grain of the jersey knit. And if I have to move this a little bit to make sure that it's straight, we might not be straight down here at my cut edge, and our selvage edge right here might not be straight. That's okay, because the most important thing on a jersey knit is that your center fold here is straight on the grain of the knit itself. And so I'm kind of eyeballing that this is going to be about 12 inches or so. It's a little bit more than I need, so maybe I'll put this back just a little bit. I'm somebody who really likes to conserve fabric because you never know what you want to do with the rest of it. So that might be about the right width. Yes. So now I can take my pattern piece. Here is the back piece, and I'm going to position that as far up as I can, right there. And there we go. And I'm just going to put a couple of pins in there to make sure that it stays in place. Next, I'm going to do the same thing on this side of the fabric so that I can put the front pattern piece on the fold. But this is how you can get away with a yard of fabric. Just trying to make sure that I'm straight on grain there. You can get away with a yard of fabric for a t-shirt when we really lay out the fabric to use it very efficiently. So here we've got a little bit extra space here. I can move that over and take as much time as you need to make sure that you're on grain and that you're using your fabric really effectively. There we go. Put a couple pins in here. The next pattern piece that we need to lay out is the sleeve. But before we do that, I also want to share with you each one of the 3 pattern pieces so that you can see the differences in the width and the length of the sleeve itself. So the first pattern piece I want to put down here is the Jersey top, and this is the true bias sleeve. So it is quite full, and actually for a short sleeve, it's a nice length. This is the Scout tee. So I'm going to match the top of my sleeve. So it's a little bit narrower and it's a lot shorter. So when I made my newest version of the Scout tee, which was the Violetta and Soft Mint, I lengthened the sleeve by 1 inch. So I just added 1 inch on below this particular pattern piece. Now I'm going to put on top of that the McCall's 6964. And you'll see such a dramatic difference. So we have a very loose fitting sleeve. We have actually it's a nice sleeve, which is the Scout tee as well. And then we have a slightly narrower sleeve opening for this McCall's pattern. Now, the one thing that I had to take into consideration for this pattern piece and for the pattern in general is the stretch. So the stretch of the jersey knit itself. With ours being 20% stretch, I need to increase the width of my sleeve because this particular one, the Jersey tee, really fit beautifully. It was wide open and just super comfortable. So I am going to increase the width of the McCall's sleeve. So next, I'm going to finish pinning and cutting out the front and back pattern pieces, and then we will cut out our sleeve and the neckband. Next, we need to lay out and cut out our sleeve pattern pieces and the neckband, but I'm going to hold off on the neckband simply because I really like to measure the neck opening and do my little calculation for our 20% stretch to make sure that I have the right length neckband. So I'm going to hold off on that for just a minute. So we'll just fold this down, kind of judging the length that you want for your sleeve. I'm going to lay this on top of here, pin it in place, and then we'll cut this out and have our sleeve ready to go. Now, the one thing on this particular pattern to consider is whether or not you want to adjust the width of your sleeve and the tightness of your sleeve. And I have to honestly tell you, the instructions for this garment, this is a Palmer Plesh pattern. And if any of you are familiar, let me find the right pattern pieces here, familiar with their patterns, they have instructions on how to adjust for most body styles. So like here's adjustments you would make for a fuller hip, for a flat back or a sway back, for forward shoulder, for full arms. So it will show you how to cut your tissue. For example, all of the placement marks are right here. Here's an adjustment line that goes horizontally, an adjustment line vertically, so that you can open this and spread it if you need to add fullness to your sleeve. And I really love these patterns simply because you can learn so much from their guidance. I'm going to set this aside. So if you do have to make adjustments to the sleeve opening, go ahead and do that before we position the pattern piece on our fabric and cut it out. But I'm going to go ahead and finish this, and then we're going to start sewing. I have all of my garment pieces cut out and ready to go, and I've made sure that all of the notches are clipped. The seam allowance for this pattern is 5/8 of an inch. So make sure when you're snipping each one of your notches that you're not going very deep, typically about 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch, just to make sure that you know where your markings are. So what I'm going to do is I'm using my serger, and I've set it up for a 4-thread overlock. If you're using your sewing machine, it's funny because I'm pointing one way or another. My serger is sitting over here, and my sewing machine is sitting over there. But my sewing machine, you would set that up for a stretch stitch, and that is the stitch that looks like a lightning bolt. Okay, so practice on some of your knit that you have left over from this project, just to make sure you're happy with the length of the stitch and the width of the stitch. You can also use a tiny zigzag stitch if you prefer that stitch. So I'm going to jump over to my serger, and I'm going to attach the front and the back at the shoulder seam. And then I'm going to come right back here, and we are going to measure the center of our neckline to get the right neckband length. I have the shoulder seams sewn. So next, what I want to do is measure and cut out our neckband. I take a tape measure, and positioning it sort of where the seam allowance would be, I follow the curve of the neckline and stop right at the seam of the shoulder, and I have 13.5. I'm going to do the same thing for the back piece. Oh, let me start that again. And I have 13. So we have 26.5 inches to go all the way around the neckline. But what we need to do is account for the stretch of our jersey knit and the seam allowance. So our jersey knit has about a 20% stretch, and I want to make sure that this fits nice and tight. And so I'm going to take that 26.5 inches and multiply that by 80%. So I'm taking off 20% of that stretch, and I end up with inches of about 21.2 to be precise with the math. And so then I'm going to add back my seam allowance, and let's cut our strip about 22 inches. Now, if I were to take this tape measure and measure the original pattern piece for this neckband, 22 inches will fit, well, a little bit narrower than the 14-inch neckline area, so a little bit less than that. So I'm still going to cut 22 inches, and the width of our neckband is 2.5 inches. I'm going to set this aside, grab my fabric, and I only need to cut one of these. And so we want to make sure that the neckband is going to stretch with our grain. So we want to make sure that we've got the right direction. So I'm going to take not that. I'm going to take this tape measure, make sure I have enough in one spot here. Yes, okay. Set that aside there. Grab my long ruler, and I'm just going to cut off 22 inches. There we go. And I'm actually going to turn this around. I always find it easier to work with the fabric when I can roll the fabric away from my ruler. Here. Here we go. "22 inches there, but what I'm going to do is cut 2.5 inches off of that first. I don't normally do this backwards. I feel like I'm doing this backwards here. And then measuring from 22 inches here. There we go. So now we have our neckband. I'm going to position this actually right on the top, centering it. So that I can put the notches back on the neckband, as well as marking the center front. I'm going to turn this around. Lining these up one more time. I should be using my pins. Okay. Now this is all ready to go, and I'm going to sew this with a 1/4 inch or 3/8 inch seam allowance here. Finger press that open, and then we're going to fold this in half with right side out, and using the notches that we've clipped into the fabric, we're going to attach this to the neckline of our garment, and I'm just simply going to serge it in place. I don't know if you can see this or not. It's pretty dark fabric, but I have finished stitching on the neckband, and I simply took this over to my serger and with right sides together serged all the way around the neckband, and then I pressed the neckband so that the seam is towards the garment. And what I'm going to do is top stitch around the entire neckline area, right about maybe 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch away from the seam. Just to tack that serging line, the seam allowance, down so that it doesn't move. And that's our neckband. I really like the stretch, and by calculating it to be just slightly less than what the neckband piece is, really is going to make a difference. It's going to allow it to still have some stretch, but lay down really, really nicely. I think had I followed this guideline and this pattern piece, it would have been too big. So I'm really happy with that. So our next steps really are very self-explanatory. What I'm going to do is, with right sides together, I'm going to jump over to my serger and stitch up our side seams. So now what we have left to do is attach the sleeve. What I really like to do when I'm working with my sleeve, and I'm going to move this away so you can kind of see this. Here are the sleeve pieces. What I'm going to do first is take this over to the serger, and I like to edge finish the hem of my sleeve. This makes it so much easier to finish once I've sewn my seam together and attached the sleeve to the top. All I'll need to do then is simply turn this up towards the wrong side of the sleeve and top stitch it in place. If you don't want to finish your edge of the sleeve ahead of time, you can always finish it your favorite way. You can fold and press the edge up and then up again, however you'd like to finish the edge of your sleeve. But I really want the sleeve to be a little bit longer, and so that's why I'm just going to edge finish it with my serger. And then when I fold it to the wrong side, I'm simply going to fold it under about 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 an inch and then top stitch. So I'm going to go get all of that done and we'll show you the big reveal. How fun is this t-shirt? I really love how this t-shirt turned out. Sometimes you never know if they're going to fit or not fit, but I really love the look of this t-shirt. So I finished off the neckline and added my top stitching all the way around. And what's funny is I actually didn't have the right thread to finish this off. I used a brown thread, but you can't even tell because of the depth of the color of this Barolo shade that we have in this fabric. And I finished off the sleeves. I like the length of the sleeve, and this I did not adjust from the pattern piece itself. So this is the short sleeve length, and I didn't adjust the length on the t-shirt either. Sometimes I think I need them a little bit shorter. So on a future t-shirt, I might actually make this just a little bit shorter, but I really, really love how it fits. I love the look, and it's going to be a great new t-shirt for this summer. Now I'd like to just summarize a couple of things. I started with a yard of our 72-inch wide jersey knit, and I only have this left. So I'm going to take a moment and cut up the rest of the scraps and just keep them. I like making pillows, or like scrappy patchwork pillows, or create a new piece of fabric of all scraps and cut out another t-shirt. There's so many things that we can do with our scraps, and maybe I need to do an episode with some scrappy projects as well. So what is your next t-shirt project? I hopefully gave you some ideas for different styles and how different some of the designer patterns are and the pattern pieces and the fit is. I think it's a good idea to always, and I'm learning this for myself, is to really always look at the pattern cover. For example, here's the Batik pattern cover, and you can tell that it's going to be quite fitted by how she has the garment on, as well as most of the time you can tell from the line drawing on the back, but on this particular one, it doesn't look like it's very shaped. But if you think back on how I laid out each one of the front pieces and stacked them on top of another, this particular pattern piece is a pretty curvy piece compared to the other patterns that I had selected. And the Jessie, which is more of a traditional off-the-rack loose-fitting t-shirt, is quite different from the one that I'm wearing. So, you know, pick your style. Challenge yourself with different looks and different styles. And I think for me, it's great to have patterns that have a little bit of a different fit, different neckline, different sleeves, so that you have your favorites that you can go to when you're putting together an outfit, and that they don't all look the same. So it's really fun to have different pattern ideas. On our website, you're going to see a couple of things. One, we always have our collection of fabric, which is our Batik Cotton Jersey Knit. We have a grouping of patterns. You can select if you'd like to add to your collection of patterns, or we also have our garment kits. And for the first week of Me Made May, which is of course now, we have a special on all of our garment kits and fashion duos where there's an additional 15% off if you purchase a complete kit. So definitely shop our fashion duos. That special will be ending this next Tuesday, I believe at midnight on May 7th. So take advantage of that. And if you have any questions about any garment sewing techniques or working with our jersey knit or anything that I might have missed, definitely ask the question in the comments below. And hopefully you are following us on this YouTube channel. So subscribe to our channel, follow us on our social media pages, whether it be Instagram and Facebook. And we do have a new Facebook group out there. So look for the Sew Batik Facebook group and join. We want you to be part of our group so that we can start sharing and answering questions, not just on a Friday or not just individually on our chat, but as a group and a community. So definitely sign up for that. It's Friday, time to start enjoying our weekend, and we want you to keep smiling, sewing, and sharing.